Something big is happening in Canadian politics. Influencers now drive the most political engagement in Canada, getting more engagement than legacy media outlets and politicians combined, meaning that traffic is coming from independent sources rather than establishment sources. This is according to a brief by the Center for Media Technology and Democracy. According to this brief, influencers generated 63.9% of all engagements across 6 platforms from January 2024 to July 2025, and 42% of Canadians report engaging with influencers on political topics, with this rising to 64% amongst Canadians 18 to 34. Now, in the influencer category, I also include independent media, so independent podcasters, so people like myself, and people like Jasmin Laine, Josh Udall of the Elevate Report, as well as Kelsey Desrosiers of Unfiltered with Kels. And this May, I got to moderate a panel at the Canada Strong and Free Network. It's the largest conservative conference in Canada, with Jasmin, Josh, and Kelsey to talk about the rise of independent media and creators in the conservative movement. And today I wanted to share with you that panel discussion. But before I do that, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. I'm trying to get to 25,000 subscribers. Like, share, subscribe, and consider getting a paid channel membership because unlike the legacy media and the establishment, we don't take a dime in government funding.
Journalism and commentary 1-year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild your foundation.
You have to retell the stories.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged with.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to our independent media and influencer panel here at the Canada Strong and Free Network conference in Ottawa. My name is Elie Cantin-Nantel. I'm an independent journalist. I'm a YouTuber and the founder and publisher of EMCN Media, and I have the honor to be the moderator for today's panel. Before we get started, I do want to thank the Canada Strong and Free Network. The Canada Strong and Free Network was actually my first donor when I decided to go independent after working for some of Canada's biggest independent media outlets like True North and The Hub. And in their investment that they gave to allow me to go independent, in just 6 to 8 months, we were able to get over 10,000 subscribers. We grew by 3,350%, and we have over 1 million views on YouTube now, which is more than some legacy media outlets who have millions of dollars and huge amounts of staff. So big thank you to CSFN. With me today are 3 people who I admire a lot and that I think are absolutely amazing. Jasmin Laine is the host of the Jasmin Laine Show. She's a political commentator, and she's also an award-winning broadcaster. Josh Udall, he's the host of the Elevate Report, formerly known as the Elevate Podcast, that talks about the daily issues affecting Canada. And I have Kelsey Desrosiers here, who is an Instagram and social media influencer. She publishes under the handle Unfiltered with Kels, and she talks about the things that other people will only whisper about. And she is really good, by the way. Like I encourage you to follow her, follow all of us, but we have really some amazing talent on stage today. So now let's get started. Guys, like what I absolutely love about independent media is how democratized it is. So when you look at a legacy media newsroom, what you usually have is everybody goes to journalism school and they'll enter a hierarchy where they're the junior reporter and all they can do is like write copy and they have to work their way up. Basically, your seniority is what determines your destiny. Whereas in our field, like I started doing this when I was 17. I was 20 years old the first time I was on this stage at CSFN. I got to go in the press gallery and grill Liberal ministers, and next to me, everybody had the title Senior Parliamentary Correspondent. I was not. And I know you guys have also gotten great access from interviewing Pierre Poilievre to interviewing Danielle Smith or the US ambassador. So my first question is, what's your background? Because, you know, we're not traditional journalists. And how has your background helped you with the work that you've done? And also, why did you decide to do this work? And I'll start with you, Jasmin.
Well, that is a bit of a story, but to begin, I suppose.
You have 2 minutes, by the way.
I will cut you off.
Oh, thank you. You're probably going to have to. But I initially worked as a broadcaster for mainstream outlets for about 11 years of my career, and the last 2 years I've been independent. So I have that as a foreshadow, I suppose, into what I would end up turning into. But ultimately, it's not the saddest story. It's not the happiest story. It's a very sad one. Great icebreaker. I actually had lost the man that I loved for 10 years of my life to suicide, and I completely shut down after that happened, and I wasn't really talking anymore, which is really hard when you work as a broadcaster and you're supposed to be a personality on air. And so at the recommendation of a number of my former colleagues, friends, family, everybody said, you need to have the courage to just have conversations again. And why don't you try to do something where nobody knows you and just talk about something that you really love? And for me, that was YouTube. I went onto YouTube where I had an audience of 0, and I just started filming content and, actually getting through it so that I could try to rebuild some of that confidence in myself that was long gone. However, in doing so, I very quickly started to notice, because a lot of the things that interest me have long been politics since I was like 13 years old. And I noticed in talking about social and cultural issues how frequently it was that there were other young men in my comment sections in particular who would repeat the exact same things that my late boyfriend used to say to me about how they can't get ahead no matter how hard they try, they're worthless, they're useless, it doesn't matter, the world is pitted against them. And those were all sayings where in the hardest side of it, I knew what that could lead to in the worst case scenario. And so I immediately just knew that I needed to go all in on talking about politics to ensure that people knew that they were not alone, they were not crazy, they were being gaslit. And yes, that is true. That one cherry-picked data point is not the full story. And we live in a democracy, and it's okay to have differing political views and wants and needs. And within about a year, I had over 100,000 subscribers, and that was my full-time job.
That's amazing, Jasmin.
So.
Unfortunately, I do have to cut you off, but amen to that, and you are very good.
I was almost done.
Yes.
I was ending.
Yes, well, I look at the clock that's ticking, and I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, Josh, what's your background, and how does that background help you in the work that you do, and what made you launch your podcast?
I just wanted to say Beyonce had the best album of all time. So how we kind of got into it was, I'm by nature, by trade, I'm a user experience designer, so I design apps, digital products for a living. So naturally, you have to understand people's human behavior and how their patterns and how they operate, and that lended itself very well into the political space. And how I got into it was, well, COVID. I'm an extrovert by nature, and I remember the third day waking up of COVID and said, this is the same day over and over again. I need something to look forward to over here. What are we doing? So I was like, I want to start a podcast, and that's what we did. And it was kind of, we dabbled more business stuff, never really got into politics. But then as COVID started getting crazier, people's politics started getting crazier, I couldn't stop talking. I was like, this needs to be talked about. This is kind of crazy. And that's kind of how that following got built up. And over time, and naturally, I'm not a politico by nature. I didn't do an internship in Ottawa in the PMO's office or nothing of that nature. But it took learning and being with people who are in this room who have been in politics and have experience and talking to them and learning from them and then informing, understanding what's happening in the world. That's what really I had to double down on top of lending my expertise of human behavior and what our politicians are really doing and catching on the nuances of their actions of what they're actually meaning versus what they are saying, which is made for some incredible content, I'll say.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Kelsey, tell me what made you want to get into this field, and can you also share with the audience the incredible growth you've had since you first got started? Because you were telling me on the phone, it's quite impressive.
Thank you. I honestly got into this because I really just wanted to be Jasmin's friend, to be honest.
Don't we all?
Honestly, I don't really have a really interesting backstory. I have always been very fearful of being in the public eye. Very grateful for this opportunity. Definitely wasn't on my bingo card. During COVID, same thing. I also was very skeptical of what was going on, and I seen very quickly, very clearly the way that the federal government was taking this country, and I started using my voice. I lost my job. I took a little bit of a hiatus after that, and things weren't getting any better. So I made my very first video on October 21st, 2025. And now I think I almost set 63,000 followers on one platform, which is a very big shock to me. It's a lot of growth. But ultimately, you know, my brain naturally works in a investigative way. I want to know the why, and I will poke holes until I can find that. I have 3 daughters, 2 of which are voting age. I want them to be strong, independent women that speak, you know, their mind and stand up for what they believe in. And in doing that, I realized that I need to be that role model for them. So I would say that probably motherhood is what drove me to be here.
That's very, very good. All very interesting answers, obviously. So former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole, he gave an interview to Global News where he said that he basically railed against influencers, and he said that we're a liability to the Conservative Party. So I want to ask you guys, are influencers a liability to the Conservative Party, the Conservative movement? Or does, in fact, the opposite is true? Maybe we actually need more influencers to spread conservatism across Canada. Jasmin, what are your thoughts on that?
I only have 2 minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As a whole, I would say no. Also, you know, that's obviously subjective. There are all sorts of different people who pursue participating in democracy in literally the most basic way imaginable, which is using your cell phone and talking. And sure, there may be some people that don't all share the same views at all. That's okay. That's why, you know, I'm proud to say that we live in a democratic nation. And I think that there's a danger as well when you think about even the talk of influencers these days, and the fact that all became really popular click material from liberal influencers who were upset about conservative influencers. Meanwhile, you know, liberal influencers have been around since the early 2000s. Conservative ones only started to become more prominent in about 2018, 2019. Of course, through the pandemic, that expedited the process that we're in right now, where there's more and more people coming up so regularly. And I think that if we as a nation start condemning individuals for using their cell phones or camera equipment and talking about politics, we have a way bigger problem that we should be discussing as a nation, because you want citizens to be engaged. That's the entire purpose, and they're not always going to get it right. But that's also how you find out the best middle ground. It's how you're able to discern information, is by having those conversations and that dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. Josh, what are your thoughts on influencers? Are they net positive or net negative for Conservatives?
Well, I'll ask the crowd here. When you hear the term influencer, typically it's a negative connotation. Let's get honest. Like, the term influencer is something that's been used to, it's been saturated, and it started like back in the early 2010s-ish. That's when influencing started becoming more of a thing through Instagram and some of these platforms. So naturally, I do find it kind of hilarious you're now taking that term and throwing it into the political sphere, because, as Jasmin said, you decide to flip the camera on yourself and start talking politics. You're influencing people. So you're an influencer. Yeah, I guess by the definition, sure. But let's be honest, politics is politics. We use terms to denigrate specific people in order to devalue what they're saying. And I love the Conservative Party. I love what they've been trying to do and trying to push. And I love people who tried to really bring us into the fold at the Conservative Party convention. But putting the term influencer on that crew actually hurt themselves a lot in the process, because that was essentially fodder used for the Liberal Party. Look at these guys, they're unserious, because that negative connotation is held to that term influencer. I consider myself a political commentator. I talk on political issues. We have serious conversations. And of course, liberals will use whatever they can to just devalue what you're saying, because they know they're wrong at the end of the day.
And to try to discredit.
Yep. And I do find it funny how specific individuals, I'll leave unnamed, worked with liberal creators to work with mainstream media to create hit pieces against us on that term. Funny how that all works. You love the influencers unless you need them. Erin O'Toole's statement, love Erin, but I get what he's saying. I would say there are far more people like, I don't know, we'll leave her nameless, but I think she's a far more huge liability to the Liberal Party or the NDP than anybody who's Aaron may have been alluding to in that interview.
I think you may know. I may know who you're referring to, but we will leave her nameless regardless. Kelsey, are you a liability to the conservative movement? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Honestly, I think that the public views mainstream media as a liability. People are listening to us because they want authentic, real conversations, because investigative journalism doesn't seem to be what it used to be. When we post our content, we are held accountable in real time. Like if we make any mistake, have any fact that, questionable, people are letting us know instantly. I've already made it very clear on my platform that if I do make a mistake, I'm going to be honest. Some of the content that I put out there could be considered a little bit dicey. And I specifically say, again, this is my opinion. And I think that builds the trust with the public, whereas mainstream media isn't really held to that same standard. I don't see them, their corrections, if they do correct themselves, their corrections are not as loud as the original story. Actually, Jasmin just let me know this last night because I had no idea, which kind of proves my point. The CBC has a correction page. I don't think a lot of people know that. I sure didn't.
Make sure to shut down that comment section.
I just learned something today. Thank you.
Right? But yeah, they're not held to that standard where, I feel very confidently that if any of us, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I do think that the fact that we are transparent and we back our statements with facts. I spend hours researching my stuff before I put it out there. I fact check it like 5 times. I don't ever want to lead the public. I take a very deep responsibility to the people that follow me because my growth has kind of exploded quite quickly. But I don't want to lead anybody wrong. I genuinely want what's best for our country, and I don't think that that's a liability.
No, that's a good point. And actually, you got into the follow-up I was going to ask, which I'll ask Jasmin and Josh in a moment. But I will touch on this. When I was flirting with going independent, this was something that came up with some of the people I was talking to about this. Well, will people trust you because now you won't be under a code of ethics? And apparently the codes of ethics are like the holy grail of journalism. And they're important, don't get me wrong. I took a course on that when I was in university as an elective. But, personally, as Kelsey said, my business is built on 3 pillars. One of them is fact-based. So when I do an investigation, when I do a video, I go through 2 to 3 rounds of fact-checking. I fact-check myself manually, and I fact-check with AI just in case I've missed something. Everything I put out is verified with almost anxiety level certainty. I had to issue a correction the other day because I have someone who's wonderful who helps me with my social media team, and he tweets out breaking news sometimes when I'm busy, and I was on vacation, and there was a shooting at a White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he wanted to tweet that out as breaking news, and he got the venue wrong. Okay, I issued a correction right away. I'll admit it, I'm wrong. Funny enough, there was a guy from the Hill Times that then tried to shame me for it, and I was like, I will not take any lessons from someone who works for the Hill Times. Thank you very much. Yeah. But Jasmin, you have a very large audience, over 200,000 on YouTube now. What responsibilities do you think that comes with, and what do you do to make sure that you're well informing your viewers?
First and foremost, I don't ever ask or demand that anybody trust me. You can take whatever you want out of the things that I say and filter that through your own mind. I'm upfront and honest about my bias, and you can filter every word that comes out of my mouth through that in a way that, mainstream media, if we're going to use that as a comparison, they claim to be nonpartisan, but then they tell you exactly what their bias is throughout the entire stories. So that in and of itself is a really big difference. I would say in terms of a code of ethics, obviously, I did previously work in the industry, so I'm familiar with how to do things. And I don't like to lie, and I don't like to be a bad person. So that guides me. And my code of ethics is probably like my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So
Amen.
With that, inherently, I do not wish to say things that are not truthful. When I first started doing this as well, I had no money. I had to leave my job, and I had nothing. My mom gave me money to pay my rent and my food, and I told everybody in my family, just give me 5 months because I really think that there might be something here. But in 5 months, if after putting 16-hour days in on the regular, which I still do, that I can't make it, I'll go get a job at Winners or something, because I love Winners. And so, within 3 months, I hit my target to be able to make this something that was self-sustaining. But this was never a money goal for me. At the time that I got into this, there was no women who were completely 100% independent in the same way that I am. And it was a complete and total risk that I did solely because we really needed it. And clearly by the massive growth, I mean, I was charting behind Joe Rogan on what are those called? The charts. Yeah, sorry. On the on the podcast charts during the entire election, which is incredible. And I've grown this platform based on that one thing alone, which is that I do my research a lot. I also talk about what's already on the public record. So, if you want to try to, I don't know, I just feel it's such a silly conversation to have in terms of it being trustworthy, when I think I speak for all of us when I say that all of our news comes from the same mainstream outlets. We just dive deeper, and it's a very different picture.
For sure, and we take the gaslighting out of it when there is some too, because sometimes, unfortunately, not all, but there are certain stories that are framed in a way that, I think is disingenuous. And you also want to talk about ethics. I mean, the amount of times I've seen CBC pieces, especially on like a controversial issue like the trans issue, they feature 6 voices all on one side, no one on the other side. That's not ethical journalism, I'm sorry. Josh, your turn now. So as a podcaster, what are the responsibilities you feel like you have to your audience, given that you don't have a code of ethics in your contract?
Yeah, well, apparently there's the code of ethics doesn't including your opening your comment sections on your videos, apparently. But I think the big thing for us, and I've heard I'm not going to reiterate the same thing. I think the big thing is the audience. I care about the reason why we have an audience in the first place is because we offered something different than what the mainstream media had to offer. And the difference is because we were trying to be authentic, trying to be real and honest. The minute you start sabotaging that, then you lose your audience. What are we doing here if you start doing that? And I remember when I first started early on, there was another YouTube channel that wasn't too happy that I was coming into the space, and they took the time to try and sewer me on a topic that I actually had messed up. And they made sure to blast that to all their followers. He's lying to you. And I made sure to get on the next video that night and said, yeah, I was off on that one. We'll do better. Here's the correction. Here's what I said. Let's move forward. I'll be better moving forward. And that just saw a growth in the audience because authenticity wins at the end of the day. And the one thing I remember, I'll start off quickly, is how this whole panel came about. Some people went to bat for us for this thing to be a CS event, and I so much thank those people for doing that. And the title of the original panel was, We Are the Media Now.
I had pitched that name, by the way.
Oh,
well, Elie, I apologize in advance.
We hated it.
My Jasmin and I,
all good.
at the time,
new one's better anyways.
We kind of went, kind of like the hyenas in Lion King. We're like, hoo, 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 when they heard Mufasa. It's kind of how we felt. Was not so much because when you hear that term, it implies a certain arrogance that I'm not really comfortable with. We are not the media now. We are a part of the media now. We don't think, if we replaced what the mainstream is, Jasmin, myself, and Kelsey, that doesn't solve the issue we're currently seeing, because guess what? We also say it. We are biased, by the way. Take us for what we are, and we move forward. And then we just become what the mainstream is now. That's not what we want. We want to highlight great journalists, and I make sure when I'm at these events, whether it be the Conservative Convention or events like these, I make sure to go up to the mainstream good actors, because there are good people, and we have to call it the bad actors. There are great actors in the mainstream who are doing great work, and we got to make sure we highlight them and not make it us versus them. It's us really trying to put our country first and making sure it is a well-informed country. And let's put those all together and cast out the bad actors who want to divide us.
That's a good point. I will say the idea behind the titles, I just like slogans. I don't want to replace the legacy media. I think all forms of journalism have a place, but I love slogans. That's part of why I love Pierre
I still love you, Elie.
It
You're great.
sounded good. It did.
Okay,
It was awesome.
I just want to build on what you
Got
said.
going.
It is true. Like, look, I have criticisms of legacy media. Personally, not a fan of Rosie Barton and David Cochrane, but I am a fan of other people at the CBC who I actually will tune into every day and read their articles. My first paid Substack subscriber was, in fact, a senior CBC journalist. So there is relationships there. Josh and I had a great conversation with a wonderful journalist in the press gallery just before our panel, and this is another woman who I think does an incredible job. So, you know, I totally agree with that. But yeah, we do have to call out the bad actors when they act badly. That's part of our job and so forth.
I just want to, just on that note though, too, you know, the whole thing, it's not like, oh, well, if you're on one of these mainstay shows doing a Power in Politics or something like that, that you're a bad actor necessarily. I think the core of the problem is really the omission of where you actually are politically and then seeing that play out. And so, you know, even people like Rosemary Barton, David Cochrane, it is okay for them to have the views that they do politically. That's called democracy. That is completely acceptable to 100%. Have, but you need to have that balance as well if you're going to be honest and truthful, because there's a very big difference in giving information and telling the truth. And your bias at times when you have a panel of 4 people who are all batting for the same team, that is going to be very apparent and there's going to be details missed. So this isn't like it's some, this is why all of us were able to grow, is because we actually offered that other side of things that mainstream media likes to pretend doesn't exist. And if they changed that, I'm sure they would not need as much subsidy money from the federal government, because they would be doing just fine. None of us get it, and we're doing great. So
yes, and by the way, if there's anyone at Power in Politics here, we're all more than happy to go on at any time to present our perspective. I mean, one of the reasons I got into independent media is I was so frustrated with conservatives not being represented in mainstream media, so I created my own media. But we're all happy to go. You know, our criticisms are never personal. It's not, my favorite slogan is, it's not personal, it's business, and I think it applies here too. Okay, well, we have 10 minutes left. There's 2 last little topics. We'll go quickly with this one. Internet censorship, internet regulation. The Liberal Party has passed several pieces of legislations, including Bill C-11, Bill C-18, and Bill C-18 has censored independent media organizations on meta platforms because of the complications from that bill. I've personally been impacted, and it impacted the type of business I wanted to create. I would have loved to start a news organization, but I didn't see it as viable if you can't be on Instagram and Facebook. Jasmin, have you been impacted by Liberal legislation? And if so, how? And what would you like to see changed?
absolutely. Both while I was in traditional media as well. I remember when Bill C-11 was going through, everybody I worked with, every single one of us thought, why are they doing this to us? And then you had the bans come through with meta platforms, Google algorithms, you name it. And it impacted everybody a lot. You know, Andrew Lawton was in committee recently, and he was asking them about this and the fact that ever since that legislation was passed, there's actually fewer independent local media outlets than there was before that legislation was passed. And I think as well, it seems very odd to have legislation to protect Canadian identity. Like, what does that actually even mean? You know, a couple of years ago, people didn't even feel pride in flying the flag. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that's about, especially when it is just another situation of the government picking winners and losers. And guess who wins? The establishment people who are a part of all of that. That's who wins, not anybody else. And it has shut out people a lot. The biggest problem I have, I'd say though, is truly the algorithm suppression. You see that on all platforms. You see it massively, as well as in Google search results. This is something I've spoken about a number of times, but if you try to search for any news story, it doesn't matter what it is, type it in, and go onto your first page of your Google search results. What do you have? Nothing but legacy outlets in Canada, even if they didn't perform as well as the independent outlets, which is not how algorithms are supposed to work. Usually you won't actually see a center or right-leaning source until pages 3 or 4. Nobody's scrolling to those, and they know that. That's why they do that. So that, to me, is probably the biggest problem. And it also just, it hurts everybody, because you could have a very good functioning business model that's successful and that people love, but then because of this legislation, it gets killed. essentially, when people do actually really love it.
Yeah, and that's not fair, for sure. Josh, quickly, what is, if there's anything you would like to see changed, and have you been impacted by censorship from Liberal government?
I mean, yeah, I think Jasmin hit all of it there because what she just mentioned is impacting all of us. But I think the big thing too is you have to, like, you only do this when you're losing. That's the behavior of someone who's losing, is you start trying to rig the game and stop. Like, let's be honest for 2 seconds. We wouldn't exist. We would not exist if the government and the mainstream media operated in good faith and people trusted them. We wouldn't be here. So go ahead, have fun, and keep pushing that legislation. Because even in the current legislation that is now kneecapping us and has been kneecapping us, we are still winning. So what's going to happen? I'm a competitive individual. I get a little feisty, I'll be honest. Go ahead, push more of it. Go ahead, you can put us in jail. Well, not figuratively, I mean, like
I don't want to go to jail.
The algorithm jail is what I mean. You can go ahead and
do
put
a
us in the
live
algorithm
stream from jail. The four of us.
Yeah, we will still win because we have the authenticity on our side. People see it, and we will find a way to win regardless. You can do whatever you so please. We will still win until you release. It's like if the minute you start trying to release control, it's amazing how things will be improved. You heard it, my son, right there. He said it right there. That's my boy. And that's the important thing, is they're going to talk all they want. As soon as they start releasing control and start being honest, we go away.
Right, that's for sure. Kelsey, 1 minute. Have you been impacted? I know you told me you had some issues with TikTok lately.
Yeah, yeah, actually, it's funny. I mean, I was banned on TikTok the other day after I released my BC property rights video. But I didn't actually know how I was going to touch on this yesterday, but last night I did a podcast with somebody from the United States, and it was all about Canadian politics and what was happening over here, and it was doing very, very well. But then last night I got a message that the audio was removed. Of course, they blamed it on music, but this creator actually uses this music all the time, and maybe it's a coincidence, but I think that it's fair to say that again, to me it boils down to what narrative is approved or not. And unfortunately, they don't believe that our narratives are truthful.
Yes, no, for sure. Well, we got 5 minutes left, and I wanted to close with this. So we all have large audiences. We all interact with our audiences. I have people in my comments increasingly telling me, Elie, I have no more hope. They look at the manufactured majority. They look at immigration, the debt that's growing out of control, and they think not only does Canada have a dark future, they don't think Canada has a future at all. And they wonder what's the point in continuing to engage in politics, because they've unfortunately come to the conclusion that it's meaningless. Jasmin, what is your message to someone who feels this way? Because there's several people, unfortunately, in Canada who've come to that conclusion.
Illegitimi non carborundum, which is a mock Latin phrase for essentially don't let the bastards grind you down, or don't let the wicked grind you down. That's something I think of a lot. Ultimately, apathy is what they want, right? Because if we all shut up, they get to continue. They get to continue spending into oblivion. They get to continue, never fixing any of the things that citizens actually want to be fixed. They can continue having elections over a topic that they don't actually address, and then telling us a few months later that their game plan is actually to make Canada a part of the EU and get closer to China, I guess. Cool. So I think that all of that is intentional, because if you have an enemy who is very strong and confident, they're going to beat you. And if you have an enemy who's beaten down and gaslit and made to feel like they don't matter and like their vote doesn't matter, that's gonna be pretty easy to win, right? And I think that all of that is very intentional. And ultimately, though, yeah, we've had a rough couple of years. It hasn't been fun. I hear you. I feel it myself too. But are you really going to let this Liberal government take your country like that?
No.
Are we really going to forget what we stand for, the wars that we have been a part of, the fact that Canada was a safe haven in the Underground Railroad? Are we really going to let them take all of that history that is so incredibly important to us, that defines us? Are we really going to let them take that from us so that we can then be defined by, well, we're not Americans? I don't think so. That's not passing the sniff test for me. And so to anybody who feels that way, I hear you, but don't give up, because hope is actually a plan, and you would be amazed at the types of things that hope and community and unity has given this world.
Very nice. Josh, you have a minute. What's your message?
What we've seen, the manufactured majority, that they keep getting on there and telling you X, Y, and Z things that, the economy this, oil prices that, you name it. They have been really putting forward a face of strength. That's the behavior of a party and a government that does not have control. They want you to make you feel everything that Jasmin said is spot on. They want you to feel that they have control and there's nothing you can do about it, which means they are actually very brittle. The fact that the biggest tell was last week when you saw a Globe and Mail article go out talking about how there's Russian disinformation coming into Canada now. That's always the biggest tell from a Liberal government that the Conservatives are starting to win, and they don't, and the population does not know it yet. They want you beaten down. They want you scared. They want you to give up. Guess what? That is the biggest tell, and do not let them tell you otherwise. They are on the brink. They are 100% on the brink. You keep watching the stories they're putting out. They are there, and we keep pushing forward and keep moving on.
That's very good. Kelsey, what is your message?
Kind of to tie off what Jasmin said there, we have nothing if we don't have hope. We, as humans, we need hope. I do try and put out a lot of hopeful content as well, trying to give people ideas on how to use their voice, because you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't even have to talk politics. You can, like with the BC thing I said, just ask your neighbor, have you checked on your title insurance yet? Like if something happens, just make it more of a protection rather than about politics. But we have to have hope. It's very important if we want to see this country improve. I do believe, I would love to unite more people, inspire the younger generation to vote, get them to understand the importance of democracy and voting, because right now I feel like a lot of them are checked out. My children included, and my oldest is 19. And, I'm always trying to ask them what their friends think. It is important. I was telling Jasmin last night that I would love to be able to, throw an event to keep that, or to, inspire that younger generation to use their voices as well. But yeah, I do. At the end of the day, we have nothing if we don't have hope.
That's true. And this is part of why, if you watch my investigations, I do a lot of investigations to the decline of Canada. I just came back from Edmonton, Winnipeg, where I got to catch up with Jasmin, Vancouver, we did Toronto, Ottawa, and after showing all the mess, I always have a part about what can be done to fix it, because there are things that can be done to fix our country. You look at countries in South America that had lots of problems over the years. They've recently elected leaders that have been able to clean things up, and I do believe the same thing can happen here. So with that, we actually ended right on time. So I would like to thank my fellow panelists for being here. I would like to thank the Canada Strong and Free Network and the sponsors that have very generously allowed us to have this stage here. So thank you so much. And as I like to say on my YouTube channel, until next time, God bless.